Okay, ready to begin.
Okay, this is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 at 5:35, and this is the meeting of the Palm Springs Architecture Advisory Committee. Mr. Knoll, will you please call roll?
Yes, Member Thompson,
Here.
Member Walsh,
Here.
Member Payline,
Here.
Member McCoy,
Here.
Member Lockyer. Doesn't appear that he's here yet. Member Dozy,
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman. He doesn't appear to be here yet. And Chair Jakeway.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, may we have the staff report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair and committee members, the agenda was published on Thursday, May 13th. And so our agenda has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? I would like to say that item number 5, which is the implementation of the new architectural review, we might take that in front of number 4 because one of the committee members have to leave by 7:30. So we don't make sure we have that item handled while everybody from the committee is still here. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Tom Dosey, second. John McCoy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, since this is a public meeting, audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that's within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that that item is presented. If somebody would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, please let yourself be known. Okay, do we have any, Mr. Knoll?
It doesn't appear that we've had.
Okay. We're going to proceed to the approving the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 meeting. Does anybody have any, oh, wait a minute, I'm jumping out of order, aren't I? No, that's right. Anybody have any changes, corrections, revisions to the minutes? Do we have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, John Walsh. Second? All second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I was not present.
Thank you. John McCoy abstains. Okay, we're going to proceed to unfinished business. Item number 2, Walmart Stores LLC for a major architectural application for the development of a fuel station and convenience kiosk located at 5601 East Ramon Road. Staff report, please.
The applicant has resubmitted their plans for a major architectural application for a new fuel station and convenience kiosk in the Destination Ramon Shopping Center. The site is located on the east side of Destination Ramon Shopping Center on a vacant parcel along Crossley Road. Originally, this application was reviewed by the AAC on April 5th, 2021. The project site consists of constructing an 8-pump gas station, a 440 square foot convenience kiosk, and a 5,600 square foot canopy. This was the design of the original kiosk and fuel station canopy. There were issues regarding color scheme, the proposed chain link fence along the mechanical equipment and trash enclosure. Landscape berm was proposed along Crossley Road, and additional landscaping at the north exit and above the proposed fuel tanks were also suggested by the AAC members. Additionally, there were issues with the modifications, the proposed modifications of the existing monument sign. This sign on the right was what the applicant had proposed. However, AAC members really liked the variation in the existing Ramon Road monument sign. So the applicant has revised, has revised their application and their plans based on these comments. And the changes include a more neutral desert tone color on the kiosk and the canopy. They have added additional landscaping on the exit towards the north and additional landscaping. So they increased the berm along Crossley Road an additional 3 feet taller than the grade of the fuel station. And they replaced the chain link fence along the around the mechanical equipment to include a gray CMU block wall. This is the new site plan that shows landscaping to the north and along the Crossley Road, the berm along Crossley Road. And this is the proposed sign based on AAC's recommendation to increase the cap 4 inches above the destination Ramon sign and increase the base of the sign 10 inches. Staff recommends approval to Planning Commission subject to the conditions of approval included in the staff report, and the applicant is available for comment.
Thank you, Alex. Does anybody on the committee have questions for staff? Alex, would you please explain the 750 square foot minimum size for the station? Where is that in the code or in the zoning ordinance?
So we have a section in our zoning ordinance that speaks to service stations, and one of the requirements is that the building needs to be a minimum 750 square feet. It's within our zoning section of the zoning code.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee for staff? Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Please give us your name and tell us about the changes in the project.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Jacob Glaze, Kimley Horn. We are the project applicant and here on behalf of Walmart. It's nice to see you guys all here again. Thank you guys for hearing our case. Thank you guys for the recommendations. We've taken those recommendations back to ourselves as the civil engineer, back to our landscape architecture team, and also back to the architect to discuss some design modifications as well as just some operational issues. So as not to repeat what Alex has said, but we feel that we've addressed all your guys' concerns. There was about 7 of them that were expressed on the last call. We feel like we've addressed all seven of them, and we're here to hopefully get your guys' approval. That way we can go on to Planning Commission and ultimately try to proceed with getting this fuel station put inside the city. I'm here to answer any questions should you guys have any. Again, thank you guys for taking the time tonight, and thank you, Alex, especially for kind of walking us through this. You've been a huge help throughout the process. So again, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Jacob. Committee members, questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, Chandosi.
What is the distance between the proposed drive aisle curb and the sidewalk, the meandering sidewalk where the proposed 3-foot berm is going to be added?
This is Jacob. I'd be more than happy to look that up. It's going to take me a second to pull some dimensions on the plan, but I'm happy to start pulling those if you wanted to ask any other questions or if anybody else had any discussion, but I will look into that. Give me a second.
I think my concern is with the height of the berm, as the walk meanders, that it gets very narrow towards the south end there, and how that berm will be accomplished in that. There is a section on the second page, but there's no dimension. Section AA kind of indicates how it would work.
From a grading standpoint, Tom, Commissioner, from a grading standpoint, I would say that we have looked at it. We do have a geotech report that we feel that we can accomplish that 3-foot high berm inside of that section behind the landscaping or behind the curb, as well as behind the sidewalk by adding benches and everything else. We do feel that we have enough room to make that work. And we will make sure that that area is landscaped as well to provide additional screenage, but we will be installing that berm there per your guys' requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
Your
questions?
comments.
Jacob, I have a question. One of our comments last time was to secure the shopping area. And in the response, it says that the cases containing the merchandise will be locked and only accessible by the attendant. So I assume that means the shoppers will notify the attendant of what they want and the attendant will retrieve it. I can't imagine that the attendant is going to walk out of his locked building and open those cases individually. So it would seem to me that the attendant is going to access the cases from inside the building. Is that correct?
That would be correct, Chair. They're going to be reaching coolers and reaching containers where they would actually reach in, pull it out. I'm sorry. As you can see inside this image here, where this lady is standing, she would walk up to the attendant. She would ask, I want a Pepsi and a water bottle. The attendant would walk back into that case. They would pull the Pepsi and the water bottle out. They would walk back. They would charge the person at the window, and then ultimately would hand them the items, disallowing them to necessarily grab them from. They wouldn't be able to grab them right off, like open the glass case and grab them. All the cases would be locked. It would be more or less the attendant would have to get the item and then give it to you.
So the cases would still have fixed glass panels facing out from the building so that the customers could see what's available in the case,
That would be correct,
but
yes.
they couldn't open the cases. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee for the applicant? Jacob, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for hearing our case. We sincerely appreciate it.
Okay, committee members, comments, questions? Steve, you have anything?
No, I mean, I think in looking at what our comments were, I think they were all addressed, and I like the color scheme. I think it works better with the main building now and is more in harmony with the rest of the complex. So I'm happy. Good.
Thanks. I'm gonna say that I'm still not pleased about the glass cases facing out. It kind of defeats the purpose of having a store that people go into. I think the intent of requiring a minimum of 750 square feet to the store in our zoning code was so that you wouldn't have cases like this facing the street, that there would be a store that's large enough that people could go into. And so I think we need to hold to the fact that this building needs to be 750 square feet so that the cases don't have to face the parking lots. Anybody else have any comments?
I would
John
concur
McCoy.
with that. Yeah.
You said you would.
I would concur with that. You know, I could see frustration levels rising as an attendant has to go and gather goods and, you know, essentially do the shopping while everybody's standing out in the heat and the sun in a line. The look of bathroom doors and food right there is not particularly attractive, and I don't know that we want to be headed down this direction as the visual, trying to keep an attractive look within the city. I don't think it adds to it.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Tom Dosey.
Again, I think one of the concerns that I have is if the berm will actually do the job of screening. I think that anybody driving by because of the canopy will certainly be able to see this facility. But I think, you know, there could have been maybe a combination of wall and berm where they could berm up against the wall. As you go further north, there is those existing walls both at the entry and then as a retaining wall at the other north side of the entry drive. And then also that they call out for one existing Palo Verde tree to remain. I would like to see an additional tree placed south of the handicap access walk, just to provide a little more buffer and screening from the street view.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Newell, one thing that I skipped over was offering a chance for public comment from the audience. Do we have anybody from the audience who would like to comment on this item?
It doesn't appear to be,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So to continue with committee discussion, John Walsh?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just, I think that they have responded and tackled the list of aesthetic issues related to the visual aspects of the color and materials. I am troubled with the functionality of it. Now, I think it was in the last hearing where they have indicated that this is a tried and true system. In other areas, I just scratch my head and think about, I think you touched on it, Mr. Chairman, there is a lot of running around that this attendant is going to have to do, and I can see a queue, a line stacking up, and it being a very uncomfortable situation. And so I think it has its roots of, it's odd. Perhaps I'm just not used to seeing something like this, but it's like looking at a glass refrigerator, and it seems an odd facade treatment to turn out to the street and to the surrounding area. It's just very peculiar, and it doesn't look, it just looks odd.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Other comments?
Mr. Chair, is there a way that I could respond to some of these?
I was
comments?
just going to say you have an opportunity for rebuttal, Jacob. What are your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the berm goes, I still am working remote today, but I'm trying to pull up that dimension. I was under the impression that the berm was originally there to screen headlights, from going on to the neighboring road. So I think the 3-foot high berm is doing that. I don't think that our intention was ever to generally screen the entire canopy or screen somebody from seeing it, but necessarily to screen the headlights from the cars either parked inside of or the cars that would necessarily be fueling at the station. If I misunderstood that, I apologize, but that was my.
I think you did misunderstand it a bit. Mr. Dosey wasn't asking for the berm to be made taller than the 3 foot, and we certainly understand it would never screen anything but the headlights. I think Mr. Dosey's comment was the area that the berm is going to go in might be too narrow to be able to build a 3-foot high berm without having a retaining wall behind a portion of it, so that the berm could be bermed up against the wall. So I think our desire is that the berm consistently be 3 feet the entire length of the property line there, other than where you've got the pedestrian access through it. So if there is not physically enough space to build a berm that daylights on each side, then you'll need to have a wall on the fueling side of the berm so that it can still be 3 feet tall from the street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So to classify that, I think we're fine with that. If that is a condition of approval that is set on to the project here, we are, once we go through final engineering, if we cannot make the 3-foot high berm work, then we will be required to construct some type of wall, decorative screen wall that would match the ultimate appeal of either the kiosk itself or of the split face or the CMU wall that's around the generator pad or something. I don't think that we have an issue generally if that addresses that comment.
Yes.
Okay. As far as the glass, as far as the 750 square feet, I know that's been mentioned a couple different times. Myself, as well as one of my coworkers, actually drove through the city of Palm Springs over the weekend. It was very nice, but we drove through the city and we've counted multiple fueling stations that are under the 750 square foot threshold. I'm not 100% certain where, or not certain, I'm not 100% clear on when the actual 750 square foot threshold was adopted, but there's multiple fueling stations inside the city that operate with this kind of this kiosk feel. I think one of the commissioners was mentioning that it seems a little awkward for someone to walk to the kiosk and then for the attendant to go and get the items behind the kiosk. I do agree that's not our ideal situation. We have other fueling stations where it does operate like that. I would say, think of if you ever go to one of these gas stations late at night and you have to walk up to the window and the gas station is locked, or the 7-Eleven or one of the other stations is locked and the attendant's there, or there's a glass window, or you want something from behind the counter, the attendant has to walk behind the counter and go get those items. So I do think that it's not the most ideal situation, but I think it's a situation that we've found that works, and also a situation that others have found that works, that having the associate reach around that area to go get it is not the end of the world. And I would say it's 440 square feet. So it's not a huge walk for the associate to go get it. So I don't know if that addresses the comment that was there, or I'm happy to further expand upon that.
Okay. Does the committee have any other questions of the applicant?
I do have one question.
Yeah, John McCoy.
I read the notes and I see that Member Lockyer asked about the lighting. I just have one other question. In the rendering, it appears that the fixtures are dropped down, that they drop below the grade of the ceiling. Are they fully recessed, or are they fixtures that drop down?
It's more of a, I assume that's back to us as the applicant. Yes, okay, perfect. It depends on ultimately what design process we go with. We can do either full recessed, or we can do where they bump out like that. It's really up to the city. I've done either one of the two options. It doesn't generally matter to us.
Okay, fully recessed really is a better route for glare control and controlling where the light is going and keeping it on property.
Yeah, fully agree with that statement. I know some folks like to see it actually, like there's sure to be some type of architectural change between that, but yeah, fully recessed is totally doable on the canopy itself. We have enough thickness inside of the canopy to make that work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion? Anybody with the motion? Well, I would make a motion that we deny this application with the comment that the building needs to comply with the Palm Springs zoning code and be a minimum of 750 square feet. And it's not specifically in the zoning code, but as part of the committee recommendations that the display cases not be visible from outside the building.
I will second.
Second from Mr. McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we are going to go to item number 3. Global Company LLC on behalf of Cali Bliss for a minor architectural application and sign permit to modify the exterior of the building and install new signage for a proposed cannabis dispensary located at 562 South Indian Canyon Drive. Do we have a staff report, please?
Yes, 1 second. Okay. The applicant Global Glow has submitted a minor architectural application and sign permit application for a new cannabis facility at 562 South Indian Canyon Drive, located within the C1 zone. The location of this property borders multifamily units on the east and commercial buildings on the north, south, and west sides. The building is an existing two-story mixed-use structure with residential units above and the proposed cannabis facility located below. The parking lot will be restriped to accommodate parking for both uses. The applicant had originally proposed to add a smooth gray stucco on the exterior of the building, add light fixtures to the right of the building's entrance, a new planter, and repaint the entire building light gray. They had also proposed to eliminate the diamond motifs on the front of the building and propose new signage above the main entrance of the building. AAC had recommended to continue the item due to a request for more information. The applicant has addressed AAC's comments by modifying the following. The applicant is proposing to modify the awning above the two residential units to include UV protective finished glass covering with steel grids and a frosted glass in between the two tenants, where currently, I believe, a torn vinyl sheet was located. The applicant will also be modifying the signage. It will no longer be located above the main entrance, but off to the right of the building. It will be backlit channel letters with lighting above, as you can see, above, I guess, underneath the balcony. New railing is proposed along the second story, and the diamond motifs are also going to remain. The building will still be repainted a light gray, and the planter will consist of a natural stone with some what they refer to as giant wild rye, which will be planted within the planter. And staff recommends AAC recommend approval to City Council. The applicant is available for comment.
Thank you. Questions for the staff from the committee? Any questions for Alex? Okay, the applicant is here. Please give us your name and describe the changes in your project, please.
Sure. Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for hearing our project. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. So in response to some of the items that—
Before you go further, what's your name, please?
Sure. Ivy Bader.
Ivy.
I am with Global Go, and I am representing Cali Bliss.
Thank you, Ms. Bader.
Of course. Okay, so upon AAC's comments, we have made the following changes. First and foremost, the sign has been moved. It will now consist of aluminum channel lettering that will be navy blue, backlit by a warm LED lighting. The sign itself will be roughly, it will start 6 feet high and will be about 2.5 feet high and spans about 12 feet long. Right above that, there will be recessed lighting, 3 6-inch diameter recessed lighting. We, as Alex mentioned, have decided to keep the diamond motifs on the front of the building to bring more life to the mid-century modern decor that Palm Springs is famous for. We also have decided to there's an existing mailbox on the right-hand side. We've proposed to move it to the left-hand side of the building where it's kind of flush with that left panel of like building that goes all the way up. And then we've also decided to update the awning with a UV protective glass. And we will be getting rid of the current torn vinyl awning on the building. There's going to be a planter built on the right-hand side of the building. In the previous meeting, there were some concerns about a meter that's located on that right-hand side of the building. And what we're proposing is to have a trap door built into this planter so that that meter will still be accessible to the maintenance crew. But you won't be able to see the meter as you're walking by the outside of the building. There will be some ivy planted on the left-hand side of the building. And additionally, I'm going to address the back edge of the building. We've decided to plant 2 Indian redwood trees in the back parking lot to give more shade. We currently have a fence on the south side of the building that is covered in ivy, and we like that. We think that's great. That's going to remain. We will also be obviously painting the back of the building and updating it. And as you can see on the rendering depicting the back of the building, there's a staircase. Right below that staircase, we are going to have a locked room where we will keep all the trash. And additionally, there will be an extra lock placed around the trash that comes from the lounge and the dispensary portion of the building, which is the first floor. Okay, and with that, I will open it up. Do you have any additional questions for me?
Thank you, Ivy. Committee questions for the applicant? I have a couple of questions. On your section, let me get to it. You call out something called Carvart glass. I have no idea what that is. What is that? C-A-R-V-A-R-T glass.
And this is for what portion of the building?
It's the typical section that you show on your page D1-0. So I assume it's the glass panels that are enclosing the dispensary from the street.
The glass panels that are enclosing, are these the front windows that you're talking about, or?
Yes, the front windows.
Yeah, so basically what those are just, front windows for a retail shop.
Is it clear glass?
Yes, it will be clear glass.
Okay. Another thing, I'm a bit confused about the balcony rail and the awnings. The current awning is a rollout canvas awning.
Yes.
You don't have any details in here of either the balcony rail or the awning, but it appears like the awning is a metal framework, and I believe you described it had translucent glazing. When you look at it from the side, there's a little bit of a pitch to the awning, but in the bottom's flat. That's confusing to me. The handrail, you've moved it back from the edge of the balcony. Currently, it's right on the edge of the balcony. You've moved it back towards the upper level apartments. And my other comment would be the glass panel separating the two balconies has no relationship to the rhythm of the vertical supports in the handrail, and it has no relationship to the supports in the ceiling of the trellis or awning. Have I missed something, or am I describing what you're proposing?
Well, what we are so first I will address the awning, second I'll address the railing, and the third I will address the divider.
Okay.
So the first item you mentioned, which is the awning, this is something that our architect recommended because it fit in with the design of the building. There are hard angles, and Palm Springs is very sunny. We wanted something that would provide a certain amount of shade, but also be indicative of the bright sunny Palm Springs traditional weather. So the glass that is laid in between the steel on the awning will have a UV protective finish on it, so that it does provide a little bit of protection to anyone underneath. As far as the railing, in the first architectural advisory hearing that we attended, there was some talk about how the rendering didn't quite reflect what the actual dimensions of the building were. So we went back and we updated the rendering that is more true to the building as it sits today. The railing on the balcony is still in pretty good shape, and we would like to keep that if possible. There are let me back up here. So there are railings that surround glass, which is lightly glazed for the balcony railing, and that glass is still in great shape. The owner applicant would be amenable to maybe putting a fresh coat of paint on that railing, and we can do it in the same color as the rest of the building, which will be a gray. And one more point I want to make about the railing. That balcony currently extends, I want to say about 24 inches from the location where the current balcony is. So as you can see, there is a little bit of a setback to that. And then the last item is this divider. And so we would be amenable to changing the type of divider, but we do need something there in the meantime. We've proposed a heavily frosted glass so that it provides privacy to the tenants. And as far as the support structure of this particular divider, this is something that the architect had proposed and did take into account structural calculations.
Alex, could you show us the photograph of the existing front of the building, please?
There you go.
See, there it looks like to me that the railing is right on the edge of the balcony. And on the rendering, it looks like it's back several feet from the edge. Or Ivy, did you say you're extending the balcony? See, right there, there's several feet between the face of the balcony and the...
Yeah, and that's how the building currently sits today. Alex, could you go back to the picture of the
Oh,
building?
are you making the balcony bigger, making it longer?
No, we propose to keep it the same. If you take a look at the left-hand side of the building, you can kind of see how it does extend out towards, and it does extend about 24 inches or so on both sides. It's a little difficult to see on the right-hand side, but if you take a look at the left-hand side, you can kind of see how that balcony goes out just a little bit towards the street.
Okay. Do we have other questions from the staff for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yes, Tondosi.
In the first time we reviewed it, we had some discussion about creating a sense of entry or walkway in front of the building. You know, right now, the whole area is just asphalt. And on both sides, there is a concrete sidewalk that lead up to this property. And I guess my question is, are you just proposing to leave the existing asphalt as it is, or? Because my concern is you have two driveway cuts on both sides, and, you know, people could very well just pull up right in front, you know, of the building up off the curb. And it just, I feel like it needs some delineation as an entrance and a sidewalk and something to the front door.
Sure. So, you know, along with this submittal, applicant preferred to leave the asphalt as is, but would be amenable to updating that particular part of the building, the frontage of the building, to include a non-slip asphalt cover. We have looked at those and considered those and would prefer that upgrade instead of pouring new concrete, which can be costly in labor and time and money.
Okay, so pretty much it's going to remain as is.
That would be the preference.
So
Okay.
Ivy, is the intention that somebody could pull their car into that space and park kind of as almost a circular driveway kind of situation?
Well, the only way that that would happen is if the car pulled in to the driveway as if it was going to the back of the property where the parking lot is, and then to kind of make a little bit of a turn and then park right in front of the building. Although that would be possible to do, that's not necessarily the intent. Alex, is there any way that we can go back to a picture of the building as it exists today? I'm noticing this curb, this picture doesn't really show it, but there's a red curb that spans most of that building except the part where the driveway is that's used to get to the back of the property.
Is that visible?
No, we can't see the curb in these pictures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That is a full standard curb across the entire frontage of the building.
Yes,
that
yes. Is there any way that I can show my screen? Am I allowed to do that? Because I do have a picture right here.
Yes, yes, you can share your screen.
Okay.
Should I stop sharing mine?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Rotman. Oh, I think you're muted.
Okay. And
Thank you.
okay. Do I need to request to share my screen?
No, I think you just click share screen at the bottom.
Okay. Okay, let me know when you can see it.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, so this is what the building currently looks like. And as you can see, we do have a red curb right here that basically spans the majority of the front of the building, with the exception of this right here, which is a driveway to the back of the property.
But there's also a driveway cut to the left of the red curb that if somebody were parked in front of your building, they could drive out that driveway onto the street.
Yes, they could. And right to the left of the building, there is parking for the residential. It's an apartment building that is to the north of this property.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course.
Any other committee questions about this or anything else on the project? Okay, Ivy, thank you very much. Committee discussion.
I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, Tom.
I think, well, my recommendations would be that the
Sorry.
city sidewalk.
Mr. Chair, sorry, Mr. Dozy, can we just open it up to anyone else who would like to speak in the
I'm
public?
sorry, yes, if we have any public comments?
Doesn't sound like it. Sorry about that.
Okay,
It's okay.
thanks for keeping us on track. Tom?
Yeah, I think, you know, with the improvements that are being made here, that the city sidewalk should extend. It comes up on both sides of the property and it should extend across and read as a sidewalk. I believe that people could pull in there, and it gives the applicant much more of an opportunity to kind of define the entry. And I mean, there's even more landscape opportunity. It's not like it's a walk-up storefront that we might see on Palm Canyon. So I would like to see that area addressed in a more definitive way. And then I also think that they mentioned some planting areas, that a actual planting and irrigation plan be submitted to staff for review with desert appropriate plants. I don't believe the ryegrass that's proposed for the planter is desert appropriate. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Other comments? Robert?
Yeah, first of all, I apologize for coming in so late. I had some internet issues, and I only heard part of the discussion. So if I repeat something that somebody else has asked about, I apologize. Just a couple things. The temperature of the 3 downlights, I think, should be coordinated with the color of the lighting on the interior as well, whether they're 2,700 or 3,000. Calvin, I think they should be consistent. I did pick up, Tom, some of your questions about the canopy and the rhythm of the framing, which I think really needs to be re-looked at, as well as the integration of the privacy screen, the vertical privacy screen. I'm not sure exactly how they're proposing to support that, but I think some details need to be developed or, about that. And then I did not see if there were actual color samples submitted. I missed that. And then I also, the glass canopy, in another climate, I would say the glass canopy is a nice idea. I'm not sure it's really that effective in Palm Springs. I think a solid material as opposed to a UV treated glass is maybe a better option. That's all I have.
Thank you, Robert. Other comments, questions? I'll add to Robert's comments. If the applicant chooses to use the existing handrail, guardrail, I think they need to modify the design of the awning so that it picks up the pattern of the verticals on the handrail, so that the handrail, the awning, and the panel between the 2 balconies becomes one integrated unit, and all the pieces relate to verticals in the other 2 pieces. In general, I really like this little building, and I think it's great that it's being fixed. But I think the final thing that will really make it good is Tom Dosey's comments that the sidewalk be continued. There's an opportunity to do some landscaping between the sidewalk and the curb. So instead of this feeling like it's just a part of the street, you're going to have a nice little front facade to this project overall. Any other comments?
Andrew McHale here at Cali Bliss. I wanted to make a comment only on in regards to the canopy and kind of address some of the concerns that were there, and the reason kind of we went to that UV protection. The upstairs was completely remodeled in 2015, and the deterioration of the vinyl canopy happened quickly. And we, although we did like the vinyl, we felt to be able to withstand the heat and the wind that's in Palm Springs, that the metal with the UV light protection would add, would be better in terms of holding up to the weather and the wind in Palm Springs. So that was kind of the reason we went in that direction, because the previous one deteriorated rather quickly. Is it was only done in 2015. Just wanted to put that out there.
I guess one of the things that's missing from the drawings is there's no details to show how that metal canopy is structurally going to be able to be cantilevered off of the face of the building. We wouldn't want to see support pieces coming back at an angle or going down. So I think if we were to approve that, I would certainly want to include a comment that the design of that awning has to be detailed fully for staff to review.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Any other comments? Are there any other rebuttal comments like that the applicants would want to make to our committee discussion?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I would make a motion for approval with the comments, and that it be further reviewed by staff unless the committee thinks that we need to see it again.
Well, because we've seen it twice already, I think it would go to staff for their review. So just before we get a second, just to make sure we have the comments correct that Tom, you wanted to include, that would be that the sidewalk is continued along the front of the building. Some landscaping be added so that there is some landscaping between the new sidewalk and the curb, and that the awning be properly detailed so it can be reviewed, and the glass partition.
Yes, I believe that the sidewalk would be adjacent to curb, and then there could be landscape between the back of the sidewalk building. Yeah. I
was just looking at the photo where the sidewalk to the south would line up directly in front of the building, but it makes more sense to bring the sidewalk out to the curb. Then when people are getting out of their cars, they'd be stepping onto the sidewalk.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I would just note that, for a new improvement of a sidewalk, typically it's, well, I'm not sure. I know our engineer is here, Mr. Rickman Harris, so I don't know if he has a comment about it, but typically the sidewalk, and I don't know, this sidewalk looked like it's actually closer, it's further away from the building and closer to the street, probably where it doesn't match whatever the general plan right-of-way requirement is or improvement is for the street. So I don't know if he has a comment about how that needs to be addressed, if it needs to be at where the curb is, or the actual curb should be moved back. And that, in that case, it becomes more of an improvement for the project.
Yeah, I was looking at the pictures, and if it was adjacent to the curb, that wouldn't be so much a problem. Where you're going to end up with a problem is on both driveway approaches on either side of the building. The driveway approach going back to the rear parking lot, and the bay parking to the apartments to the north. That connection of the sidewalk in relation with the driveway approaches, it will not meet the new ADA requirements for a 2% crossfall of a sidewalk going around the back of the driveway approach. They would essentially have to rebuild the entire driveway approaches and all the curbs and gutters. That would be quite an impact there, because the curb, if you notice, the curb doesn't line up with the rest of Indian Avenue. It jets out at that location, probably because we don't have the right of way. So we would have to look at, do an analysis to find out how much right of way we do have versus where the sidewalk would go and how it would meet ADA requirements.
I have a question for Rick. The way it stands now, would it meet ADA requirements going across from the sidewalk, across the asphalt area to the drive approach to the south?
I don't think so. You'd really need to have a detailed grading plan or site plan to show us what those cross slopes are, and meeting that 2% crossfall of the sidewalk as it meets the two approaches. We just don't have that information in front of us.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something that the engineering department would require before this project could be approved?
If the sidewalk is something that the committee wanted to require that they do, then they would have to submit something to us so that we can determine whether or not it would fit within the existing right of way and whether or not it would meet ADA.
So if we didn't require the sidewalk, would there be any engineering requirements for the area between the building and the street?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see here in the screen that I just put up is the overall view. The property to the south of it looks like they may, their property line is certainly further east, whereas this property is, this property, the existing property line or right-of-way line is much closer or much further into the right-of-way area.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the property line that's there, that the image that David has up, you can see where the current right-of-way line is. It's directly right behind the curb. So if we were to put sidewalk in there, they would essentially have to either dedicate right-of-way or dedicate an easement for that sidewalk, because the sidewalk would essentially be on private property, and we don't have the nexus to require that.
Could the committee allow them to leave the asphalt that's there, but require that some bollards or something be put between the driveway and this asphalt in front of the building so that a car couldn't pull into that?
I don't have any objection with it.
Okay. Okay, so that's some new information. Tom, why don't you start out with your motion?
Well, the motion was for approval with some kind of modifications to the front entrance within that asphalt area. I still feel there's an opportunity to enhance what's there, maybe without having to go to the whole re-engineering of the curb and the driveway entries. And perhaps that could be worked out between your engineering staff and planning staff with the applicant. But to somehow define it more clearly so cars do not make that attempt to pull into the front of the building. So I might need help, David, how to amend that amendment or amend the motion.
Well, you weren't second, so what, it was never seconded. So why don't you just start over again with the motion?
Well, I think we can certainly just indicate that the sidewalk space in front of the building is to be modified to provide a defined pedestrian area from the driveway area. And we can work out the details.
Okay. I will amend my motion to include that the asphalt area in front of the building be revised and working with staff to define a clear sidewalk area to the front of the building. And that a final landscape and irrigation plan be submitted to staff for review.
And as part of that, we're still requiring that the canopy awning be detailed.
Correct.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, John McCoy, or whoever, we'll give it to John. I saw his hand. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Now we go to new business. Ken and Melissa Erke, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, owners for a major architectural review for the construction of a 3,900 square foot, single-family house on a hillside lot located at 2216 Monument Court, Zone ESA SP, Planning Area 4, Pacific Palisades Specific Plan. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let me start to share the screen here, and we'll do some slides and go through them. You all can see that, right?
Can see it,
So,
yes.
yes, all right. So the house, as you mentioned, is in Desert Palisades. It is on a 12,663 square foot lot, which is one of the smaller lots in Desert Palisades. But the house will be 3,900 square feet or 31% of the lot coverage. Before you is a 3D rendering showing how the house will sit. It's rectangular in size. It is a split level with the western end of the house, the lot 10 feet higher than the lower end. So they've managed to tuck the garage and a 2-bedroom suite underneath the main level of the house. So I want to point out here in this picture, the driveway. The driveway width is 12 feet, and they'll be using porous concrete, and you'll see the joints that plants will grow in between, and some of the landscaping that is along the front, which includes Palo Verdes and other trees. This is a view of the house. It has an infinity pool with a large overhang that faces south. And then there are trellis structures that also provide shading, and you'll notice that it's a glass frontage that faces the street and the south. And once again, this is a view of the front from Monument Court. So looking at the site plan, the house meets the design guidelines as far as setbacks for Desert Palisades. It is 25 in the front, and then 15 in the rear, and then also keeps the conservation areas on both sides of the lot. So as I mentioned, this is one of the smaller lots in Desert Palisades, and they have managed to fit the house in with a large boulder berm, which is along Monument Court, and then another Aurora that is being protected in the rear. There is a slight depression in the lot that that is not a main drainage area, but when the house is constructed, it will alter some of the grading there. So in looking at heights of the house, as the committee knows, there's a pillow height of 18 feet from natural grade, and you'll see how the house terraces down the side with the garage tucked underneath the main portion. The materials that are proposed are smooth plaster for the main body. There's metal fascia, there's a metal door for the entrance, and the main entrance to the house is on the lower level, and I'm circling that right now. And you can see that when we go through some of the floor plans. So in the rear, there are glass on the lower level for the 2-bedroom suites, and you can see inside here, this is the stairwell that leads up to the upper level where the main living area is, consisting of a great room, dining room, and then a master suite. In looking at these dotted lines, you'll see that the natural grade, there is this depression here that we talked about, and then the larger Aurora to the north, and then the boulder berm along the street. So some other 3D renderings, you'll notice that that's a solid overhang, and then on the side, both north and south, there are metal trellises that provide solar control. And then in your packet, there's a series of these 3D renderings that show how the house is placed along the street, and then showing an outdoor area off of the master suite in the back, and then this larger Aurora that runs to the north. As I mentioned, you have a material board that shows the type of texture, plaster finish, walls and ceiling, and the types of elements that will be used throughout the house. So just go through some of these photographs. This shows cross sections of how the house will sit. Currently, there's no structures on either side of it. However, there is a house that sits across the Aurora to the north. And that was one of the original houses on Vista de Estancia. Looking at a grading plan, we try to minimize grading as much as possible in Desert Palisades. And then a landscape plan. So you can see that the site is using desert plants, some trees that provide privacy on the front and in the rear for the house to the north. And you have plant material, a plant palette. And Chair, that concludes my report. The applicant is here and can discuss the project.
Thank you. Committee, questions for the staff? Glenn, I have a question. I didn't, the grading plan wasn't included in our packet. Could you bring the grading plan back onto the screen?
Yes, let me get to it. Sorry that I missed that in the.
There. So is the intention where they're depressing the lot in the upper right corner, I guess it would be the northeast corner, water is going to run down that slope, and they're showing in the section that the windowsill of those bedroom windows is right at the grade of the bottom of that slope. I really question water running into those bedrooms.
Right here in this
Yep,
bottom section. Right, I'll have to have the applicant, right, because the water has to run, it won't go up over this Aurora, so it has to run along the base of the house.
Is there water from off-site that would be coming across from the northwest corner that would be running across the back property line that would then be directed down towards those windows?
There, as I mentioned, there is a depression here in the middle of the lot. So at some point, it's not the main water runoff, but there could be water that comes from these upper lots that would be diverted around the house.
Okay, and Glenn, am I missing something? I don't see any indication of a pool fence.
Well, there's not a pool fence now. They could use a cover, a locked cover.
Okay, we'll talk to the applicant about that. Staff, any other questions, or not staff, excuse me, committee, any other questions for the staff? Okay, I believe the applicant is here. Could you give us your name and a presentation of the project, please?
Sure. My name is Brett Woods of Woods Day Garen Architects. We have had the luxury of working in Desert Palisades already. I am the owner and the architect of Lot 3. So I've been down this road, understand the complexities of the development, and as Glenn mentioned, some lots are different than others, as in most developments, but more specifically in Desert Palisades, where they can vary depending on their location. Really, when you're looking at this house and the way that we approached this project, and sort of, I guess from a philosophical sense, is really to sort of quiet down the architecture, simplify the form, and to really have all the materials be really natural. You're noticing in the renderings, we're communicating a tone that is sort of symbiotic with the landscape or the natural environment. The granite boulders, the natural kind of dirt, the sort of wild vegetation that you find out there. So what we try to do is sort of embrace that, make the house become, like I said, kind of quiet it down. One thing that I learned on my property that I'd like to bring up here, during this discussion is privacy. I've mentioned this to the developer, Ed, had many talks with Sean Lockyer about this. Because the development allows for hikers to hike through the development, you get a lot of people up there walking daily. My property is exposed, like most of the properties, and some of the most amazing rules in this development happen to be that there's no fencing. They encourage a lot of glass, really kind of modern architecture. But the challenge really is living there. I have been staying at the house from time to time, and I can tell you, everyone here, that the frustration that we have is for privacy, or the lack of privacy. And so I think one thing when we developed this home, because the property naturally descends from the west to the east, we thought it was a nice opportunity to strike a datum from the west, carry that across, and have the house almost lift up off the street. So therefore, when people are walking by, clients don't feel so exposed when they're sitting in their pool, or trying to have a nice dinner outside. So I think one thing this house does address is something that my house doesn't address, which is it has privacy. Another thing that you're seeing in the renderings that is a direct response to our last home would be vegetation and the placement of trees and the benefit to how the trees can help the elevation. So Glenn was mentioning earlier, the main trees that are being used in the front, which have been approved by the specific plan, is the Cascade acacia. It's a tree that we really like a lot. But just to kind of sum everything up, I know there's a lot of questions, and I'll allow the committee to get into those. Really, the house itself is again, something we felt was a responsible design to continue the legacy of Desert Palisades and the legacy of what our office does. So I'll turn it over to the committee.
Thank you, Brett. Questions from the committee for the applicant? My main questions, Brett, I think it's a beautiful project, and I love the way you've got it landscaped to create that privacy. Now, I question just some of the technical issues. I really don't see enough mechanical rooms. I mean, you've got one mechanical room off the garage, but the way I figured, you have to have a place for spa equipment, pool equipment, 2, maybe 3 HVAC units, water heaters, trash, and possibly even a sewage pump based on your grades. Where is all that going to go?
Sounds like questions from an architect. Well, it's a good question. Glenn, do you mind pulling up the floor plan? Do we not have them in here? I can pull them up.
I'm not sure I put them in the presentation.
Well,
I thought I did.
There.
Okay.
Well,
no, that's the landscape plan.
Yes,
I guess maybe let me start by answering the question. We do have, upon entry, and I can pull up a floor plan of the ground floor. We do have a mechanical room. Certainly, it is going to be a very efficient mechanical room. Regarding mechanical, we also intend on using split systems. So, we will try to minimize impact. We are looking at VRF systems as well, slimline systems. So those will be located in the property and will be screened appropriately. Regarding trash, this is also something that will have to be further development, to be honest with you. We came across the same question on our project as well about where trash is located. For us, the intention is not to actually build any more walls, and so we'd like to build anything into the existing, to the structure itself to hide the trash cans. I intended to put the trash cans inside of the garage. That would be that is a conditioned space, but that's certainly where we typically would like to have them. I know in the O2 house, I've stayed there a handful of times. That's where they keep theirs as well. I kind of like that idea just because it kind of gets it out of the way. And obviously with it being temperature controlled, it's fine to be in there. Were there other ones other than mechanical and trash? What were the pool equipment?
Pool
Right.
equipment, pool and spa.
Right, pool equipment will have to be located next to the VRF system. So we'll have a mechanical plan on the outside that we're gonna have to work into this this property as Ken mentioned, I mean, as Glenn mentioned, this is a tight property. So we're trying not to put too much stuff out into the landscape, which will have to be approved by the staff anyway.
In the Palisades project, can you put equipment out within the setback areas?
You can, as long as it's approved by I believe at the local level. Glenn, you can speak to that, but I remember that was the same for my project where it was in the setback, and it was approved by the AAC as well as the city as well. Mm-hmm.
And what's your intention for a pool fence?
My intention is the same as what I did at lot 3, which is per California code is there will be a removable cover that will have grommets in the stone, and then there will be also a fence that will be around the pool itself that can be removed when using. So I have the same condition at my house.
Thank you.
And sorry to further expand upon that. It's a tough question in the Palisades, as you
I know.
You know, they encourage you to do infinity edge pools, right? We are in hillside, quote unquote, and so there's going to be a challenge for every one of these pools in Desert Palisades. As you guys have probably all reviewed a bunch of projects.
Yeah, unfortunately, state law was going to mandate over HOA regulations, I think.
Yeah.
Committee, other questions for the applicant?
Can you address your initial question of drainage?
Yeah, no, that was a good question. So I think, you know, that's something that we're concerned about as well. Our technique on the outside would be a drainage swell off the back. You know, with working with civil, that would be the only way to address that concern. There would probably have to be some sort of relief off the back sill, the bottom sill, and then we'll have a drainage swell coming
But
across the bottom.
it looks to me like it would get around the side of the building, but then it's lower than the street by several feet.
That should not be lower than this. Sorry, Glenn, for reference.
Doesn't the driveway slope down from the street?
Sorry, let me pull up the.
Yeah.
There we go. I don't know if I can zoom in or not, but that's
Right, so you can see on the civil plans, there's a drain that's actually taking the water out.
Okay.
Can you see that?
So it's coming to an area drain,
Is 6-inch pipe taking it out to, yeah.
but it seems like that drain is below the curb, below the street.
887.
The numbers.
It slopes down 8.6% from the street to get there.
It says that it's at 880. Sorry, Glenn, you were going through 887 at the front, and it's 890 in the back.
All right.
Right, this is 890. And the front is 889.
So the invert, they're showing at 887, but the curb's at 889, so it's 2 feet below the curb. Anyway, that's just a technical issue that I just make sure you pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Any other questions from staff? Okay, do we have any public?
What about, real quick, what about exterior lighting? I don't know what the Palisades rules are in terms of overhead lighting for patios and stuff.
Yeah, we're minimizing lighting on this project. We will have surface mounted can fixtures. So in specific locations, we won't overlight the overhang. We don't, and obviously on all egress doors, we will have, per code, we'll have a sconce, but other than that, that's the only lights that we'll have out there.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments? Mr. Newell, do you see anybody waiting to speak on this?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Brett, thank you. Committee members, discussion?
I have a comment.
Sure, Tom.
When I first saw the landscape plan, and I appreciate the architect elaborating on it, this is one of the more densely or heavily landscaped plans that we've seen. The only comment I have is that when you look at the landscape plan and you look at the graphic scale, the Palo Verde trees, the symbols of the canopies themselves are showing what appear to be maybe 12 feet or 16 feet. So in reality, it will be more dense once those Palo Verdes get 25 feet wide and so forth. So it's just a comment for the applicant to be aware of that. The level of density is pretty high here, and he may not need as many trees as he's actually showing and still be able to get the privacy they're looking for.
Thank you. Other comments? Robert, yeah, Robert.
Yeah, I think it's a great project. I think it's looks terrific from the street. I really appreciate the comments about the issues about privacy. I think, and maybe staff can reinforce this, when they did the guidelines for Desert Palisade, I think they intended that there wouldn't be as much landscaping around the houses, that it would be much more natural, so that when you look at the development from below, from Palm Canyon or the rest of Palm Springs, that you wouldn't get these high densely planted areas, and that it would look like houses on the cone, on the Chino cone. So it's a tough problem. It's a tough issue to achieve the privacy and yet still honor the intention of the landscape guidelines in Desert Palisades. I think maybe some circumspect elimination of some of the trees might solve some of that problem and still honor the privacy issues that the applicant raised.
Thank you. Anybody else? I think it's a great looking project. I would just ask the applicant to pay attention to all of the site mounted equipment and things so that it can be screened. And the other comment I would have is there's very large flat surfaces of stucco. I would recommend that you might look at some reglets, some patterns of things so that you've got some expansion opportunities in that. But that's just a technical issue, but that technical issue can become a quite interesting design subtle feature.
So Chair, your recommendation will be forwarded to the Planning Commission for a meeting in June.
My recommendation just then?
No, the committee's recommendation.
Oh, thank you.
There could be some revisions between now and when the Planning Commission reviews the project.
Right, okay. No more comments? Do we have a motion? Robert.
Yeah, I will move to approve the project, and with the comments that were made about the landscaping, possibly looking at eliminating some of the trees, either whether because the canopy is much larger than they're represented, or because to reduce the sort of overall over-landscaped look of the property, as well as looking at the plaster, reglets, and other drainage issues.
We have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dosey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Brett. Great project.
Thank you. Can I make one more comment before
Sure.
we head off? I want to congratulate everybody here because I was on the, I was part of the planning commission meeting the other day. I hear that you guys will now be the final say in recommending projects for Desert Palisades. I think you're about to talk about this, but I think it's a huge step forward for the city and I think for Desert Palisades and processing. And I think this is the correct move. So I know my voice isn't that important, but I was excited to hear that that's where they're moving. So
Thank you. We appreciate comments from the trenches.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 5. Implementation of new architectural review processes established under ordinance number 2042. I think Mr. Newell is going to present this to us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So let me pull up my presentation. Okay. Do you see the framed screen or the whole screen?
I see 2 things. I see the title and the flow chart.
Okay, let me change that. Okay, now you hopefully see the whole screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. So as you'll recall, back on March 8th, we introduced to you the proposed ordinance relative to the architectural review process changes that the city was preparing to implement or introducing. So that we discussed it with you, and then the Planning Commission had a public hearing on it and they recommended it for approval. The City Council ultimately adopted the process. So that occurred on April 8th of this year. And so as staff plans for implementation of that, we wanted to schedule this for really just an introduction on how this will change the committee's review of projects. So as you know, our current process, this is typically what we see is we receive an application that's submitted. It's usually a major architectural application or a minor architectural application. For the major architectural applications, those go to you for approval, and then for approval and recommendation to the Planning Commission. There are instances where an item gets restudied and then it comes back to you, and then you get another review of it before it goes to the Planning Commission. So that is our current process, and then ultimately the Planning Commission approves it, and in some cases it may require City Council action depending on the type of application. Generally, the major architectural applications are not reviewed by council unless appealed, but so that's really our current process. So as I said, the council did adopt the process, the new review process that will occur for development permits. And so really it's kind of 2 applications that are being processed. It's both a site development permit as well as an architectural review application. So in our new process, as we introduced you back on March 8th, it does still, or will now require a pre-submittal conference with staff. So staff would look at, or would receive the materials in a schematic format. We'd review the project for conformance to development standards, and we provide initial feedback on the new criteria that is required to be reviewed for both the Planning Commission and Architectural Committee. So that happens in step 1, as you see here on the screen. Then after they've gotten those comments from staff, a formal submittal would be submitted by the applicant, and that would include both the architectural application and site development permit application. which would submit to staff. We would review all the things that we normally review prior to taking it to planning commission. So we would do the internal routing. It would go to the different departments. We would conduct our SQL review. And so all of that would occur. And then the item would go to the planning commission. And the planning commission now has specific criteria that they evaluate relative to the site development permit. And then that really, once the planning commission approves it, if it's just a site development permit, the action ends there at the planning commission for that portion of the review. If it requires other applications like a general plan amendment, a rezoning, a plan development district, it would go to city council for action. But that, again, for typical projects like commercial buildings, single family, hillside projects, multifamily projects, that doesn't really occur. And then after it gets through the planning commission and step 4, we would, the AAC would review it for site design, landscape, composition, color, materials. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But so this is really the new process: a pre-submittal conference with staff, planning commission action on an application, and then AAC review after the planning commission has approved the project. So as I mentioned, there's 2 applications that will be submitted for a new project. That would be the site development permit that the planning commission acts on, where the planning commission reviews the use of the uses that are proposed as part of the project, the site layout of the project, the conformance to development standards, height, setbacks, etc., and then any environmental impacts. So the standard SQL review that we normally do. The architectural review process, as I said, is typically a major architectural review or a minor architectural review. After the planning commission acts, the AAC would act on the subsequent application, and they would review the details, materials, colors, landscaping, and lighting. And as I said, I'll get into specific criteria in just a moment. So with this new ordinance, the AAC, there will be some changes that we will be implementing effective July 1st of this year. The AAC will be renamed to the Architectural Review Committee. And then the new ordinance, it does define similarly to kind of how the format of the committee is established now. But it is a new name for the Architectural Review Committee. You're no longer the advisory committee because you are acting on specific applications under the new ordinance. So the ARC will review new criteria, as I said, when you evaluate applications and make decisions on these applications. Typically, new applications for development will be reviewed by the planning commission first, as I mentioned, and then the ARC would review specific criteria relative to the development afterwards. And one other thing that has changed in terms of the process, as we went over initially, the ARC will have final decision authority on hillside development applications, including single-family homes in Palisades or elsewhere in the city. So as with all hillside developments, we currently provide notice to adjacent property owners when we receive a hillside application. We would still do that in accordance with the requirements of our hillside ordinance. And instead of providing notice prior to planning commission decision, we would provide notice prior to the AAC decision on the hillside application. So there's really 2 notices that happen with the hillside request. It's the initial submittal and then a notice to the adjacent neighbors again 10 days before the committee reviews the application, so that adjacent owners are aware the application has been received and are aware that the committee will review and take action potentially if it's approved at the first review 10 days before. And lastly, sign programs, the committee will also have final decision authority And so that would include both sign programs that comply with the sign ordinance, as well as sign programs that are requesting deviations from the sign ordinance. So the ARC, that decision would be final at the ARC unless appealed to the Planning Commission. So this is kind of hard to probably read a little bit, but basically what it does is it shows what our existing processes are relative to the different types of architectural review applications that we have, as well as conditional use permits and signage applications and signage requests that we receive. So on the left, you'll see the different architectural applications that we typically see, the types or the existing process next to that those applications go through. And then the new process that you see in the middle, kind of on the right side, as well as notes relative to those changes. So what you see here in the red are really the items where applications have changed from review by, for instance, under architectural review, major applications here in the middle of the screen. Typically, a lot of applications previously we went to AAC first and then went to the commission. Now, staff has the pre-submittal conference for all of these applications. The Planning Commission takes action on an application, and then the AAC would review the item afterwards as opposed to before. And as I noted, some items no longer require Planning Commission review. So those decisions would be final at the AAC or the ARC. Now, there has been some streamlining relative to conditional use permit applications. The Planning Commission would still review CUP applications for cell towers, charitable institutions, government facilities. And whereas before that also required council, that will no longer be the case. Those will be final at the Planning Commission. But I think the most important thing relative to the ARC after July 1 is that you will be reviewing and deciding on hillside applications that are either hillside or major thoroughfares, single family homes, as well as sign programs, as well as the fact that now the ARC reviews applications after the Planning Commission has reviewed architectural review applications require their approval. So in terms of getting to the specifics of the criteria that you review, this is a screenshot showing the existing criteria that the AAC and Planning Commission review when it comes to architectural review applications. These 9 criteria you've seen for a very long time, and it's been this way for a very long time. But this all changes with the new ordinance, and there's more defined criteria and guidelines that both the Planning Commission has as well as the ARC will have. So in terms of the ARC criteria that you'll be reviewing, these criteria will have in your staff memos after July 1. And basically the criteria, as we'll go through here, is really specific to architectural detailing, composition and design, whereas before it was more general. Here we get a bit more specific in the ordinance and talk about treatment being consistent on all 4 sides of a project or a building. We're asking that the committee review the design of the structures, the accessory structures that they be consistent with the principal structures or structures if there's multiple on a property. We're looking that the committee will review that the composition of the facade and the elements and fenestration is consistent, that the materials are also consistent with the context of our desert environment and the surrounding area. Also, the color scheme is appropriate for the context and desert environment that we have, and that the project is providing shading and solar control where appropriate. So based on the conditions of each site, that the project has these sets of details addressed. The committee will also be looking at the landscape plan and that is consistent with the city's water efficient landscape ordinance, as well as other criteria for appropriate materials and requirements, whether that be in a specific plan or elsewhere. The committee will be looking at shading of sidewalks and pedestrian facilities, ensuring that landscaping is installed adjacent to pedestrian areas to provide these, the shading amenities that are appropriate here in our desert environment. The committee will be looking at the lighting plan, as well as conformance of proposed lighting to the city's outdoor lighting ordinance. The committee will be looking at sign locations and placements. Are they appropriate for the locations and as well as the sizes of the proposed signs? The committee will also be looking at mechanical equipment, service areas, trash enclosures, all of the things that we have discussed tonight. And lastly, that the project is consistent with any design criteria that we might have relative to projects either in a specific plan or a plan development district that might have established standards. So for instance, the Miralon project has design guidelines. The Asina project has design guidelines. So if, in those cases, we would ask for your review of those items. So those are really kind of the main points that I wanted to go through. And if there's any questions relative to the process or the new criteria or the role of the AEC, I'm certainly happy to answer that. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, David. I think it was a clear presentation, and I think we're understanding our new role. I kind of look at it as a promotion, that now we're going to be the final say so in a lot of these things. And I think the new system should work a lot better. Any other comments? Okay, any comments from the committee on any other issues or questions? I have a silly question, David. Why are we meeting today on a Tuesday instead of yesterday on a Monday? It's not a holiday on my calendar.
You're correct. When we establish our yearly calendars for your meetings, planning commission meetings, HSBB meetings, we run it by our clerk's office and they review it for issues relative to not only holidays, national holidays, but also potential conflicts with religious events or dates. So that's evidently yesterday was there was a conflict with a religious event.
Okay. David, do you have any other comments to the committee other than what we've discussed already? Anything in addition?
Nope, just thanks everyone for your time.
Okay, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.